Hey guys, welcome back to another marvelous video. Today we're going to talk about 10 horror films directed by the late great Stuart Gordon. Stuart Gordon was a prolific director known for being a huge HP Lovecraft fan and for his significant contributions to the horror genre by adapting the macabre tales of Lovecraft on the big screen. Lovecraftian horror has evolved into its subgenre, and works of Lovecraftian horror now get formulaically rendered, ticking off a list of tropes that audiences now expect from it. However, that was not the case for Stuart Gordon's Lovecraft adaptations. Gordon's adaptations resulted in stories that were simply told and were originally hard to follow. His films displayed new writing to revitalize the horror genre a bit, as it sort of stagnated during the late 1980s and early 1990. The vivid characters and frequently brutal special effects present in his films cemented his status as a horror master, influencing a whole new generation of young filmmakers. So, without further ado, let us take a look at 10 of Stuart Gordon's best horror movies. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Dagon, 2001. Loosely based on HP Lovecraft's novella The Shadow over Innsmouth, this film follows a man who discovers a sinister secret about a coastal Spanish village. The plot revolves around Paul Marsh and his girlfriend Barbara, who are on a boat trip with two pals off the coast of Spain. Things were quite normal until a violent storm drove their boat to crash into the rocks, prompting Paul and Barbara to seek assistance in the adjacent village of Imboca. Upon reaching Imboca, the locals initially appear strange and hostile. It soon becomes clear that they are members of a deadly cult that worships ancient sea gods. As Paul delves deeper into the mysteries of Imboca, more terrifying truths about the residents, their ritual, and his personal connection to the village begin to surface. The climax of the movie centers on Paul realizing his fate and uncovering the true identity of Dagon, the god worshipped by the villagers. Reviews upon the release of Dagon were mixed to positive. The film's mood, along with its effective incorporation of Lovecraftian elements and Ezra Godden's performance as the protagonist, was well appreciated. The cramped and dark setting perfectly captured the unnerving atmosphere found in Lovecraft's writing and aligned with director Gordon's vision. However, some reviewers noted the film's erratic pacing and low-budget special effects as drawbacks. Nonetheless, Lovecraft fans have praised Dagon for staying true to the original story and being convincingly executed. Fun fact, Dagon was Stuart Gordon's final adaptation of a Lovecraft story for the big screen.
This time I'm not running away!
From Beyond, 1986. From Beyond is a horror film based on the short story of the same name by HP Lovecraft. The movie revolves around Dr. Edward Pretorius, a scientist played by Ted Sorrell, and his assistant, Dr. Crawford Tillinghast, played by Jeffrey Combs. They invented a machine dubbed the Reanimator, which stimulates the pineal gland, a part of the brain. Once activated, it allows one to perceive creatures that live in another parallel dimension. During one of their experiments, they encounter monstrous entities, and Pretorius appears to be killed by one of the creatures. Crawford is charged with a murder and is taken to a mental institution. However, Dr. Catherine McMichael, played by Barbara Crampton, believes his story. She enlists the help of Detective Bubba Brownlee to return to the house and attempt to turn the resonator back on to recreate the experiment. The horrifying truth about Pretorius, now a grotesque creature capable of moving between dimensions, is literally realized through this experiment. As the experiments progress, the curtain that separates reality from another dimension blurs, leading to frightening encounters and transformations. From Beyond today is a cult favorite despite receiving mixed reviews when it first came out. The film received a lot of praise because of its inventiveness, suspenseful atmosphere, and outstanding performances, especially from Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs. At that time, the impressive special effects created the eerie mood for which the movie made a reputation. However, a few critics have belittled the film as overly sex-drenched and overly violent. That doesn't matter, as From Beyond is hailed today for its daring vision and Lovecraftian horror aspect replication perfectly. This film showcases Stuart Gordon's talent for vividly bringing Lovecraft's unsettling and otherworldly settings and characters to life by fusing science fiction and cosmic horror in a way that is still remembered today. Castle Freak, 1995. Fast forward to 1995, and Castle Freak reunites Gordon with Combs and Crampton in his loosest version of Lovecraft. The film combines aspects of two Lovecraft stories, The Outsider and The Rats in the Walls. Castle Freak focuses on John Riley, played by Jeffrey Combs, his wife Susan, played by Barbara Crampton, and their blind daughter Rebecca. They come into an inheritance of a 12th century castle in Italy, hoping this scenery change is exactly what will be needed to move beyond the recent tragedy of their son's death. However, the Riley family is unaware of the castle's deadly secret. Giorgio Dorsino, son of the previous owner of this house, the Duchess of Dorsino, was imprisoned and tortured here in this castle. And he's still alive, chained in this castle's dungeon. Giorgio eventually gets free and begins haunting the castle, opening the door for a series of terrifying encounters. As the family tours the haunted castle and learns about Giorgio's terrible story and their relationship with him, they must face both their internal demons and the genuine monster behind the walls to survive and escape. As with most of Stuart Gordon's work, Castle Freak received divided reviews upon release, but has since developed a cult following. The film did score well for atmosphere, neat performances, and a general regard for practical effects. The vibe of this film is dark and gothic, which goes well with the sense of dread and fear evoked by Gordon's approach. In short, I must add that Castle Freak is valued highly by many fans for its sheer intensity, well-developed characters, and respected handling of Lovecraftian themes. Thanks to Castle Freak, the fusion of gothic horror and domestic psychological drama would filter into the future of horror cinema, especially in those films dealing with emotional trauma and otherworldly terrors. Dreams in the Witch House, 2005. Dreams in the Witch House is the second episode in Season 1 of the anthology series Masters of Horror. It was helmed by Stuart Gordon and based on an HP Lovecraft short story of the same name. The story revolves around a college student named Walter Gilman, who rents an attic room in a boarding house near Miskatonic University to finish his thesis. Soon after moving into the house, Walter begins having some strange, ghastly visions about a witch named Keziah Mason and her familiar, some sort of rat-like creature by the name of Brown Jenkin. As time passed, the dreams got stranger and viler, the blotches growing more pronounced until they blurred the axis between reality and nightmare. He soon discovers that Keziah Mason was a 17th century witch who had performed black magic rituals in the exact house where he was staying and who could travel into other dimensions. As his mind slowly unravels, Walter begins to realize that if he indeed hopes to set himself free of their evil clutches, it means confronting the witch and the familiar. Dreams in the Witch House received rather favorable reviews from fans and reviewers alike, most of whom praised its faithfulness to the original Lovecraft story and its ability to deliver an effective horror atmosphere. Many people have praised Ezra Godden's portrayal of Walter Gilman, along with the creeping dread and unearthly fear that are typical of Lovecraft. A few commentators noted that although elements of the visual effects felt a bit tacky at times and reflected the limited budget, it was generally recognized as far superior to many of the other entries within the Masters of Horror series. Reanimator, 1985. Reanimator is a cult classic horror film inspired by HP Lovecraft's serialized novella Herbert West, Reanimator. It was Stuart Gordon's debut as a director. The story follows Herbert West, played by, you guessed it, Jeffrey Combs, a brilliant but unorthodox medical student who arrives at Miskatonic University with a radical theory. He believes he can conquer death with a serum he has developed. Yes, that's right. Apparently, the serum can bring corpses back to life. Since it's a Lovecraft story, you can guess how horribly wrong that can go, and of course it does. To improve his serum, West teams up with another medical student, Dan Kane, and the two begin their experiments. The experiments spiral out of control, divulging a cavalcade of horrific and bizarre events. To make matters worse, following the disastrous initiation of reanimation, Dr. Carl Hill, a nasty professor with evil motives, became interested in West and Kane. To close out the movie, there's a bloody confrontation between the reanimators and their monsters. Trust me, you don't want to miss that. Reanimator, upon its release, was critically acclaimed and proved to be a success. A balance of horror and black humor clicked with critics and viewers alike, with some newer and bolder special effects. Jeffrey Combs received many acclamations for his portrayal of Herbert West, reaching an appropriate tone for both the scientist and his ambiguous morality. Excessive gore, visually brilliant set pieces, and the fast-moving plot were responsible for the firings done in this movie and its cult following that survives to this day within the horror genre. The success of Reanimator spawned two sequels, Bride of the Reanimator in 1990 and Beyond Reanimator in 2003, both of which continued the horrific experiments of Herbert West. Reanimator is regarded as a landmark in the genre, poised with the deft combination of Stuart Gordon blending humor and horror together into a holy mix, most of all with originality. The movie inspired scores of future horror comedy hybrids and often comes at the top of the heap of genre-defining works. Edmund, 2005. Changing direction from Lovecraft, the next film on our list is Edmund, a psychological thriller adapted from David Mamet's play of the same name. The movie stars William H. Macy as Edmund Burke, who does something seemingly out of character. He abruptly leaves his humdrum life to undertake a journey into the dark underbelly of New York City in search of self-discovery. From that moment on, everything began to go haywire for Edmund. He gets himself entangled in a series of increasingly disturbing and violent situations that take him through some pretty seedy bars, grimy streets, and unsavory characters. Along the way, during encounters, he has to challenge his prejudices, fears, and desires, dragging him to a shockingly unexpected and transformational ending. Opinions on Edmund were sharply divided among critics. Whereas most commended William H. Macy's intense, committed performance and the bold unbridledness in trying to deal with alienation, racism, and violence in this film, Stuart Gordon's directorial catapulted with a very raw and gritty take on urban decay. Many found the story of this film too relentlessly depressing, and the protagonist was an unsavory character. But others took to the challenge. Sharply at odds with the audience's response, Edmund is remembered for its gutsy storytelling and its remarkably devoted take on Mamet's shocking play. This film stands out in Stuart Gordon's filmography as a captivating and unsettling psychological thriller. It demonstrates his ability to tackle complex subjects while delivering compelling, character-driven stories. The Pit and the Pendulum, 1991. After adapting a few Lovecraft stories for the big screen, director Stuart Gordon felt the time had come to adapt something from Lovecraft's biggest influence, Edgar Allan Poe. Those familiar with Poe's work surely have heard about the ironic short story, The Pit and the Pendulum. Based at the height of the Spanish Inquisition, it's a film about the terrifying experiences of a young woman, Maria, who is accused of witchcraft. She and her husband, Antonio, get entangled in the web of the ruthless Grand Inquisitor Torquemada. Through his fascination with Maria's beauty, Torquemada is shown to break her spirit with gruesome torture. Meanwhile, Antonio desperately tries to save her from the dungeon of the Inquisitor. The film reaches its crescendo when an iconic pendulum torture device is showcased to kill in the ticking time race to save Maria from certain death by her husband Antonio. Upon its release, The Pit and the Pendulum, just like most of Gordon's films, had somewhat mixed reviews. The picture got very good applause for its gothic atmosphere and its ingenious set design. Others saw it as diverging too greatly from the original story by Poe, with excessive violence. Years after getting many really negative reviews at the time of its release, this movie has gained a large cult following for its dark and moody feel, acting, and Stuart Gordon's streak as a director. This film became another example demonstrating Stuart Gordon's ability to transform classic horror literature into visually stunning and atmospherically rich pictures, solidifying his status as this genre's master. Dolls, 1987. Stuart Gordon's supernatural horror thriller Dolls combines dark fairy tale elements with traditional horror themes. Judy, a small child, and her parents, David and Rosemary, are lost during a storm at the beginning of the movie. They take up residence in the enigmatic old home of elderly doll makers Gabriel and Hilary Hartwick. Three other individuals, Isabel and Enid, English hitchhikers, and an American businessman, Ralph, arrive at the estate to seek refuge from the storm. Gabriel invites all of them to spend the night together. It quickly becomes apparent that the house is stocked with these remarkably lifelike dolls, which eventually show themselves to be more than just toys. The dolls come to life as the night wears on and start taking revenge on the nasty grown-ups who invade their world. Judy and the other visitors must work through the mansion's hazards and figure out the live dolls' mysteries along with their makers. For most reviewers, this film received applause for its incredibly original plot, impressive practical effects, and a rather gigantic dose of horror that lets dark fantasy filter through. Praise was showered on the atmospheric setting, the unnerving and grotesque design of the dolls, and the moralistic sense reminiscent of fairy tale. One of the strengths of the movie was Stuart Gordon's direction, which shaped a very different and intriguing horror experience, one that didn't remain in the usually banal genre realms. People did duly notice the short length, but overall, the pacing was taut, frolicking with chill. In Dolls, Gordon, who is known mainly for his Lovecraft adaptations, inserts dark whimsy and a fanciful narrative, and underscores it all with an impending sense of dread. Just as in the traditional fairy tale, the film addresses some moral issues, but with a kink. The dolls are present to protect the innocent and punish the wrongdoer. Fortress, 1992. Stuart Gordon's science fiction film Fortress is set in a future where population control laws have become very strict. The movie pivots around John Brennick and his wife Karen, who are imprisoned for attempting to have a second child, a crime very seriously punished in their society. As a result, they are sent to a prison called Fortress, an ultra-modern maximum security prison run by Mentel Corporation and its sadistic director Poe. This prison also serves as an indoctrination camp and slave labor exploitation center where the prisoners are forced to construct the fortress of this prison industrial complex. Among the tools of the prison equipment, there are devices called intestinators that prisoners wear as part of a physical regime coupled with mental disciplining, which can quickly put the wearer into excruciating agony or, if needed, kill them. John joins forces with other inmates to organize a risky prison break because he's determined to get out and see his pregnant wife again. The movie chronicles their battle for liberation and resistance to the repressive regime. As you can guess by now, upon this film's release, it divided critics. The richly imagined setting, solid performances, and exciting action sequences gained a lot of praise. Stuart Gordon did well in bringing out the tension and a grim sense of claustrophobia within the prison. However, the consensus felt that the plot had a formulaic nature, and at times, its special effects were somewhat archaic. Nonetheless, the criticism served as a backdrop for Fortress attaining cult status years later, with a great storyline at its underpinning and a convincingly conceived dystopian setting. Its popularity led to the creation of its sequel, Fortress 2: Re-Entry, released in 2000. You should totally check them out. Space Truckers, 1996. Wrapping up our list on a lighter note, Space Truckers actually remains Stuart Gordon's most light-hearted film to date. It minutely blends elements of science fiction and comedy in a rather futuristic setting where interstellar travel is normative. The plot revolves around John Canyon, an old space trucker who hauls cargo all over the galaxy. During a routine delivery, Canyon unwittingly gets entangled in a perilous conspiracy by agreeing to transport mysterious cargo. Alongside his eccentric co-pilot, Mark Pucci, and Cindy, a former waitress who became a stowaway and made a marriage agreement with him in return for an opportunity to see her mother on Earth, Canyon faces off against space pirates, dishonest space enterprises, and unrelenting kill squad. In their race against time to deliver the package, they come upon a plot that puts humanity's very existence in jeopardy. The special effects and set design in Space Truckers are really impressive, with just about the right amount of science fiction mixed humor. Dennis Hopper's smooth, wisecracking turn as John Canyon was well paired with Stephen Dorff's oddball take on his sidekick. As for the director, Stuart Gordon did an excellent job with this one, embracing the evident campy and experimental tone of the film reminiscent of old-school B-movie. Marvelous verdict. Well, that's all, friends. Stuart Gordon had an impressively eclectic career, both in the kinds of movies he chose to make and in his considerable directorial talent. Stemming from a classic Lovecraftian adaptation such as Reanimator and From Beyond to fanciful features like Dolls and Space Truckers, he embedded his stamp on both horror and science fiction. His genre-bending aesthetic sense and storytelling style leave an imprint that is relevant to this day. Through this, he has built up a huge and loyal following for genre movies, since he can smell something of horror, humor, and social commentary together in both very unique and effective ways. From plumbing deep into cosmic horror to whipping up whimsical science fiction adventures, the films of Stuart Gordon go on to capture and entertain audiences long after the credits roll, hence solidifying his stature as one of the true masters of cinematic storytelling. Which is your favorite Stuart Gordon film? Do let us know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, hit the like button, and if you loved it, please share it with all your friends. I'll see you guys soon.